identify and make decisions about what pieces of that technology we should be keeping.
All right, we are recording.
Okay, welcome everyone. This is Laureen Kamalu, Davis County Commissioner, and this year's we're just starting as the new chair of the wonderful Indigent Defense Commission.
Everyone should clap.
Well, thank you for that. And I will first read this anchor location declaration, or if I don't read it word for word, I'll give you the general idea. So I, Laureen Kamalu, the chair of the IDC, hereby find that conducting IDC meetings at an anchor location currently presents a substantial risk to the health and safety to those who may be present at the anchor location. So the President of the United States, the Governor of Utah, the County Health Department, the Mayor of Salt Lake County, the Mayor of Salt Lake City, and the World Health Organization have all recognized that a global pandemic currently exists related to the new strain of the coronavirus, COVID-19. So it's virus easily transmitted, been spreading globally. There's a state of emergency. And so during the state of emergency, the IDC won't be providing an anchor location, but we will ensure that notice to the public contains information regarding how a member of the public may participate in an electronic meeting. And this determination not to meet in an anchor location shall be valid for 30 days. And I have signed that. And so here we are meeting electronically, and thanks to all of you. We will do a little roll call in a little bit of a different way, mainly because I've still been getting to know all of you and the different discipline that you represent, which is required for the body of this commission. And so I'm going to go through and say these requirements. And if you are filling one of these, if you can say your name, please, that you're here, and also where you are currently working. It might be obvious with some, but it's not obvious with all. So, and I just think it's really cool to see who's part of this group. So there are two practicing criminal defense attorneys that were recommended by the Utah Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. Who are those two?
Wally Bugden, I'm one of those.
Yeah.
Chairman, I'm not sure that the President of the United States has recognized that there is a pandemic.
I think that you might be right. Thank you.
And I want to second Wally's point on that, and also indicate that I believe I am the other individual who is a practicing defense attorney recommended by UACDL.
Mary, do you have a jail compartment in your car?
It's a dog compartment, Wally.
It looks like it's something that would be used to detain an individual.
Well, I have a big dog, but
I'm not letting anything get by today.
No, you are not. I appreciate the help. It's my first day as chair. So you are the two. So fun. Okay, one attorney practicing in juvenile delinquency defense recommended by the Utah Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. Who is that?
That's me, Pam Vickery.
Pam, thank you so much. All right, one attorney practicing in the area of parental defense recommended by an entity funded under the Child Welfare Parental Defense Program.
And that is me, Margaret Lindsay.
Nice. Thank you, Margaret. One attorney representing minority interests recommended by the Utah Minority Bar Association. There you are, Sam. I knew that was you. Thank you. Okay, and one member recommended by the Utah Association of Counties from a county of the first or second class. Who might that be? That's me. All right, and I'm in Davis County. Let's see. So one member recommended by the Utah Association of Counties from a county of the third through sixth class, and that is Sean Mill. And he's excused. He's in a leading actually of the meeting this afternoon that I'm missing with the Utah Association of Counties. So next is a director of a county public defender organization recommended by the Utah Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers.
Lorraine, I believe that would be me, Rich Morrow, Salt Lake
Yeah.
Legal Defender Association.
I thought that was you. Great. Okay, and then there are 2 members recommended by the Utah League of Cities and Towns from its membership, and I'm thinking that's Ryan. I'm not sure if he's on yet.
Ryan and Heather. Heather's excused today. She told me she's on an airplane right now.
Oh, okay. And Ryan, you are in South Jordan. Where's Heather from?
Orem.
Okay. And what is your position at in South Jordan?
I'm the city attorney. Heather's the assistant or deputy city attorney.
Okay, great. It's so great to have cities that are part of this group. And 1 retired judge recommended by the Judicial Council. I think I know who that is too, if he's on.
It's not present, but that's Michael Zimmerman.
Yes, very good. So then the Senate shall,
Count, Sam.
so the Senate shall appoint 2 members of the Utah legislature, 1 from the House, 1 from the Senate. And that is, they're probably not on yet, right? But Senator Weiler and then Representative Joel Ferry. By the way, little known fact, I have a neighbor in Kaysville whose name is also Joel Ferry. So I was confused in my first meeting thinking it was him because I know he's an attorney, but it's Ferre. So anyway, interesting. And there's no one else in the world with my name, Laureen Kamalu, just so you don't ever get that confused. So the last one is the Judicial Council shall appoint a member from the Administrative Office of the Courts. Who's that?
That would be Judge Noonan, and I'm here on her behalf. I'm Michael Drexel. I'm the Assistant State Court Administrator.
Great. Thank you so much. So that just helps me know a little bit more about all of you, and someday we will meet in person again, someday.
Karen Kamalu, will you do me the enormous favor of having my staff remind everyone who they are, because I don't know that you know what they all do, and it always helps to remind, and they will talk very fast. I know they will.
I would love that. Yes, please. Let's, do you want to go through and name them and then they can say what they do?
Yeah, go Leslie. Oh. Uh-oh, is there a bug on Zoom today? Okay, Leslie is our data and research analyst. Katrina, you're up there now. Katrina?
I'm the training program coordinator. Katrina Adair.
All right, thank you.
Greg?
I'm the grant program manager.
Okay, Deborah?
I am the Chief Appellate Officer for the Indigent Appellate Defense Division that was newly created this year.
And last and definitely not least, Mr. Troop.
I am Adam Troop. I'm the Assistant Director, and I am primarily focused on juvenile court issues on child welfare and delinquency. And I will turn my camera on soon, but I have to move to another room to get better reception.
Okay, I apparently owe some people minutes off their life for having my staff introduce themselves, but I think it will save us future time when I say, remember Greg, he's our grant program manager, or remember Leslie, she's our data analyst. You'll just remember. So once a year, I promise to remind you of who my staff are.
I think that is brilliant and important. Yeah. So that's your entire staff?
Well, there's me too, but yes.
Yeah, wow, yeah. You guys do a lot with a few. Way to be. So first item up is our approval of minutes. If someone has had a chance to read those who was in attendance and can make a motion.
There's a question in the minutes, and I'm wondering if Ryan can confirm or deny whether he seconded the motion for the minutes last time. I think you're pretty positive you did.
I did.
Okay, we will make that adjustment. So as amended.
Very good.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of October 5th, 2020.
Thank you, Margaret. Do I have a second?
This is Wally. I second the motion.
Very good. I have a motion and a second. Is there anyone who does not approve these minutes? Please say nay. All right, then I believe we're unanimous approval of the minutes. Thank you. Okay, next is an update from the IDC staff regarding Duchesne grant issues. So we'd like to hear about that.
IDC staff and commissioners. So I'm not leaving you all out of that. If you remember, we have a grant with Duchesne County. It was one of our earlier grants. It was a regional program to have them work with Uinta and Daggett under the sort of management by the Uinta County Public Defender, who was on our meeting, Lance Dean, and his administrative assistant, Jenny Bird, right? That's your last name, Jenny, yes. And they're amazing. And we spent, Pam remembers, we spent a lot of time interviewing people for this position. We sat with the commissioners from Duchesne and Uinta and Daggett and spent 8 hours interviewing people, and we found Lance, and it was great promise. It was our first kind of regional program without a public defender's office like Utah County. And we've continued to try and work with Duchesne, but we're having issues. So the first issue is that, you know, we had to cut our grants and then we reinstated some portion of them, if you remember from the last session. And Duchesne informed us that they wouldn't be changing the contract amounts to reflect the amendment. This was after they accepted and signed the grant award. So we sent them a notice of, I don't know the technical term, it's the first letter we've had to write of this sort. We worked with Lorraine and Sam on it to make sure it was clear. And we asked them to correct that. They have until next week to do that. It is apparently on the agenda to do that, and they are moving in that direction. The other existing issue is that our grant contract requires a MOU with the Uinta County Public Defender. He's also the project director, so he is a signer on the grant. So at this point, there's no MOU, and he has not signed the grant, and I have not signed the grant. So we are a quarter into reimbursements, and the MOU is not being agreed upon. There were various versions that have gone back and forth, some of which I don't believe comply with indigent defense core principles. We tried to reduce the MOU to a very bare bones MOU. I'm hoping this is also up for discussion on Monday. Lance, I don't know if you want to confirm or deny if you know that. But it's disappointing because this was such a high priority county relationship, and it's disappointing to see it sort of sliding backwards. And I wanted to bring it up because I am not comfortable with me being the only person involved in this, and the corrective action letter, that's what it's called. I hope we'll fix things, but I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that and that I don't really know what to do to keep moving them forward. So I'm not asking for a vote, I just wanted to discuss it. There is one other issue that's out there, and that is their contracts for the conflict attorneys who are representing the 5 people charged with murder. One has actually just been convicted, who went to trial. It was our first jury trial in Duchesne. Mary represents one of the other defendants. So there's been some sort of back and forth there too. I think that's the least of the issues. I think Mary can resolve that. But these other issues, for me, it's just so disappointing to see, right? Because, yes. So that's all I really wanted to say, is just to get it on the record and to say that I need some, I appreciate any thoughts you all have, and if I can rely on you to talk through some issues as they come up.
Yeah, thank you for that, Joanna. That is challenging, disappointing. I invite anyone who has insight or anything to share or ask. It's time for that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to talk a little bit about your conversations with the commissioner?
Yes, I can. I should bring my phone closer. I know the two of the 3 commissioners in Duchesne pretty well. And so I reached out to the one who is working with the defense there, and he's been very agreeable. But I don't know that he, even if he's the commissioner working with it, commissioners must rely on their subject matter experts. And so he didn't seem to know any specifics about what the problem was. I could just see if there's anything else in the.
I think what that reflects is that his subject matter expert is the county attorney, because he's not working with the public defender. And so that's where the problems are arising. It's the county attorney who's trying to redraft the MOU. And we all know that indigent defense should be independent of the judiciary and especially prosecutors. And that's in our core principles and one of the tenets of our grants. And so it feels extremely awkward to be working on this grant where that is kind of going backwards.
Yeah, I have the commissioner says that they will be having conversations this coming Monday with the attorney and the commission assistants helping with the paperwork. They need to work out the kinks with attorney fees and the MOU with Uinta County and move forward. So to me, he seems to think that it will move forward. So that's as much as I know. I wanted to just make sure that I offered any communication or clarification or anything else to help the county. And so he did not indicate that they needed any help to move forward.
Good, and let's hope for the best, and I'll keep you all updated.
Anything else? Anyone else have any insight at all, or is that just helpful to know the status?
I think it's very helpful to know status, Commissioner. I know those commissioners out there too, and they're very reasonable and are interested in developing what they're doing and interested in learning. So it's good to know that you've been in touch with them instead of what I think we've had a lot is the contact with the county attorney's office. So thanks for doing that outreach, and I hope we can get them to be more involved as we move forward in time.
Yeah, I'll be happy to stay in touch with Commissioner Todd a little and check back, and Joanna and I can also just keep each other up on anything we hear. And so hopefully whatever these kinks are, they can hopefully get worked out pretty quick.
Yes.
If the kinks aren't worked out, do we need to have as a commission a plan B for how to use that funding so it can be put to a better use quickly? I mean, what's the assessment from staff on that?
I think that's a really good segue to our next two issues. And so that once we talk through those, we can certainly figure out a way to, if we need to pull that funding. I hope we don't, though, and put it back into the general pool.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, great. We'll come back to that then. Good question. All right, so then the 4 on the agenda is the grant program redesign. This was kind of cool. We did have a meeting yesterday with the little work group, and it was good. There's some good input, good working on this from staff. So we'll have an update from you all.
Okay, I'm working on that. So give me a minute. I think I have it. So thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to go through what turned out to be quite a lot of slides. So I apologize for that. I'll try to move through some of them quickly, but as Commissioner Kamalu knows and the other members of the work group know, it was a lot of information to talk about at the time. So I'll start going through this, and let me tell you first the work group for this body was comprised of, let's see, Commissioner Kamalu, Pam Vickery, Margaret Lindsay, Ryan Luz, and sorry, who else is this? There was someone else from cities. Heather, right. But I think that's it. I named 5, and staff put this together too. So what we were charged with doing, what the work group was charged with doing, is defining some terms that the commission had come to at the last meeting. There was the discussion of what new money is and how we would use that, how we would define that, and then also organizational capacity. What does it mean with regard to how we design this, how our priorities are set. So as we worked on that, we went back to the material we'd put together earlier. And what we ended up with was a staff proposal that we brought to the work group, which looks like the chart below. I'm going to ask Leslie to take a minute to explain that, partly because she put this together and proposed it to us as staff, but also so you don't have to hear me talk for the next hour alone. But Leslie, would you jump in and do that?
Buzz anymore? Okay, I'll keep talking until it buzzes and then Joanna shuts me off. So we talked about this a little bit at the last IDC meeting, but this idea of organizational capacity really having different pillars. And this photo is from our crazy sticky note adventure we went on for strategic planning. But really talks about in order to get what we'd like to get done in indigent defense, you need four main things. You need management, support staff, resources, and intentional community creation. And those all lead to all the other core principles that we are so interested in, like scope of representation, specialization, caseload, conflicts, investigators, experts, peer knowledge and feedback, etc. But it all really comes down to none of this can get done unless you have that management structure, unless you have that point person at the top who can really communicate up and down the ladder and see what's going on and put the rest of the structure in place. That's the short version of it.
Which I think is good. If you, as we go through this, what we are looking at is those first two boxes, right? If we can get to those two on the right, that's great. But the development, I think, has to start with those points that Leslie mentioned as priorities. So the work group looked at this, and we understood each other, I think, as we talked about what the priorities are and what the definition is. So when we went to the next step, though, we had to identify what that meant, right? When we're talking about priorities for funding, we had to look at different levels and different priorities within what management means. So we came up with these, and they're interestingly 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, and 3. But it was pretty clear when we're talking about these things. We've always talked about regional structures. We've always talked about capacity of regional structures and managers. And then the secondary point being non-regional structures. And as we got to 3, all other requests, I think those are those two boxes to the right, as opposed to the ones on the left. And we have questions about whether in new grant cycles we will get to that level. But we'll see that as we develop this. I want to make a point because Ryan raised it yesterday too. These priorities don't work well for cities. I know we only have a few involved right now, but as we move forward in time, I do think we've got to be aware that there's a difference in what they can do as regional systems and why they would consider regional systems different than counties who work on a larger scale. So there's questions there, but I think these priorities work for everyone to a greater or lesser extent, depending on what their government structure is. The work group approved these as priorities. And so before I go on, I just want to make sure that if anybody has a question about this or where we are so far, or anybody on the work group wants to explain what their thoughts were, I'd be glad to hear that too.
Adam, I just want to clarify about the cities, and that Heather made the very salient point that there is actually a way forward for cities with this. They just hadn't conceived of this, that there might be a central office that all the cities in the 4th district could contract with, whether it is the Utah County Public Defender's Office or a city-specific office. And we talked about that too. So yes, we need to have a separate track for cities. But we do have some cities working with us through the Utah County Public Defender's Office and in other ways. So we're not kicking the cities to the curb, Ryan. Ryan was there, he knows that.
Never thought you were.
Yeah, thank you. That is it's an important clarification because these do work, but they don't we have to have adjustments as we go forward too, especially with current grantees. So as we set our definitions and then identified some priorities, the next responsibility that the commission gave to the work group was to define what we meant by new money. The commission had agreed that we would use new money for this process. But as we got together and talked about it, there were a couple of problems we came up with. And one of them is, if we're really going to use only new money, we're going to have a very slow progress towards organizational capacity and developing that. If we're only using new appropriations, we don't get too far this coming year, or in future years, we may have small amounts of money that's actually new appropriations coming in. So we stepped back and looked at the way we have done grant funding to date, and the fact that grants have been an application process on a yearly basis. They don't carry over. There are new applications and new expectations for reporting what you will do with the money every year. So why would we not identify that money as new money? And why would we not just use that approach with the every year applications for grants, and recognize that no one believes or no one really can count on the same grant funding for the same purposes every year. And that's where we ended up. I think one of the pieces that is important to remember is one of the bullets I have on there: state appropriations to the IDC are never guaranteed for more than a year. We saw this year that any increase isn't even guaranteed for a year, but we do have the expectation that the IDC will go back and ask for state money every year. So this is where the work group came out, and I came down on it, and I think this is an important point for discussion if people want to raise it or want to have that. We know that there will be some questions from current grantees, and there will be some challenges in how we communicate this message, and staff has talked about that and has ideas, but certainly the commission has to approve this approach if we are going to justify going that direction with current grantees. So any questions, or anybody from the work group like to weigh in, or anybody from staff like to weigh in on how we got here and why? Questions about this? Is there a concern about using this approach and telling current grantees that we may need them to modify what their requests are in the coming year, modify what their current grants are in the coming year? Okay, I will tell you, we have talked about the fact that this next coming cycle is going to be a process of collaborating with our current grantees more, and letting them know well in advance of the application period what it is that that we'll be asking for, what it is that the commission will be looking for.
Adam, I think there are some questions.
Okay, sorry, go right ahead.
I have a question. So how does the working group envision what, let's just say we go with this approach, in 2 or 3 years, how does the working group envision this approach to have transformed the way indigent defense is delivered in terms of competence, efficiency, et cetera, compared to simply continuing our carrot with slight stick approach of funding the existing organizations in the existing way they run?
So Michael, if I can talk to that a little bit. We've always funded managing defenders, right? We have one in Iron County, we have one in Uintah County. We've built up the Weber County managing defender with an administrative assistant. So this is not radical for many of them. It's just a more focused, targeted idea.
Right.
And we came up with it because of, in part, that JRI audit and the focus on having local coordinating councils, right? Having an
Right.
identified person who can speak to indigent defense for the whole system. And so I think a lot of the counties have already recognized that, right? Cache has a managing defender that works with Rich. Box Elder has a managing defender, Weber, Davis, obviously Salt Lake, Tooele, we fund the managing defender. So all the way down to Carbon and St. George, you know, all the grantees we work with, and then even some ones that we don't have managing defenders. So I think
Would you view them as meeting your qualifications?
well, I think that's the trick, right? There are managing defenders who run public defender offices, and there are managing defenders who run, you know, well-organized assigned counsel systems. And then there's more organization that could happen in others. And so I think that's what the focus would be for the others. So take Weber. He has an administrative assistant who is helping him with data tracking and making improvements there, but he could really potentially use a data analyst help. Have a regional data analyst that can help Davis and Weber counties track their cases and report to the IDC and their respective commissions. That might be a really great use of our funding. Same with even LDA and UJDA, right? Last year they had asked us for a data analyst. So those are two highly functioning managed offices that also could use help to build out and expand their capabilities. So I think it's a rainbow of managed assigned counsel systems that we're trying to make more level. And I think if we build it, they will come. And I think about Commissioner Kamalu talking about how critical her public defender employee is and how much she values that. So I'll stop talking, but I think I'm hoping it won't be a radical change. I do think it will be a surprise, but I don't think it'll be a radical change.
So how many of our grantees will see this as, they may see it as a significant change as opposed to whether we think it's one?
Running through my mind, I think we have a managing defender involved in every single one of our grants. Sevier, Wayne, Iron, Washington, Carbon, Uinta, Daggett, Duchesne, Cache, Box Elder, Weber.
Okay.
But if I can add, Michael, the fact is there will be questions about that, and there will be uncertainty. And I've been using this a lot coming back to Washington County. They have a managing defender. The question is going to be, what is that defender's role, and what kind of authority, or what's their role, right? And if we try to tell a county they have to make a full change to get from point A to our point A, that's a problem. But as we discussed, yeah, and it's a problem. And as Leslie said, we will have a problem with riot control.
And is Washington County an example?
Right. But we did talk in the work group, and please speak up, anybody who wants to, but we did talk in the work group about the fact that we're looking at this also as incremental. The question of how small the increment is really is the key question. But if we're moving forward in increments and we have a managing defender who's already in the system, the step to the next point is not as bad as not as difficult as trying to create a managing defender position somewhere where it doesn't exist, right? And we'll get to a definition of how we're looking at the details of that. But we can collaborate with a county like Washington and help them to build their system in the direction that the commission wants. But if they choose over a 2-year period not to move much, then I do think we have to ask the question about whether they are on track to support the priorities and the system design that the IDC is asking for. So it gives us some chance for collaboration, but forcing a change would be very difficult, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Pretty crucial question though, Michael.
Yeah,
very helpful question and good explaining.
Can I make one more point before we move on?
Yeah.
This plays well with the legislature and the executive branch too. It went into our budget request to the governor, whichever governor may be considering that, as a justification for the restoring our FY21 funding. And we tied it to the audit and to the priorities for local, if local control is a priority in the state, which it is, it still has to be organized and has to be well managed, to be able to help the state meet its responsibilities. So, and then the legislature as well, when we have talked about this in interim meetings, it has resonated for those same reasons. So looking upward and outward, I think it lands. It's a way to talk about our grants in a really focused way, as opposed to just needing money for stuff.
Could I ask one more question, Joanna? Do you think the legislature responds well to the argument that the state money needs to be spent in a way that puts structures in place that maximize the effectiveness of the state money, as opposed to their responding to local government saying we don't want to change how we do things?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's an easy answer to say yes. And I think they do. I think the state funding expectation would be not to just pass money on to local governments, but to build something that they can, as legislators, turn to and say, here's what we've done, and here's the reports we're getting back from the state agency. I think we should proceed with that idea in any case, because if we agree that structure is important, then we need to sell that idea. But I do think it's better than simply saying to local governments, hey, you take this money and you do what you want with it, which I think is what you're getting to, Michael, in a way, right? What's the complaint from a county about what they're being asked to do, and does that resonate more with the funders than does the structure we're building?
Yep. Thank you.
I have a question, and that is whether this may also get pushback from attorneys practicing in court on these contracts, along the lines of a soldier in the trench saying, we needed more resources and you decided to spend it on more generals. And I'm the one who's in the trench taking incoming fire, and I need a new machine gun, and you've decided to get me a new general back at the Pentagon. I wonder if there will also be a pushback from that sector, because I suspect there is a sense that that sector is underfunded.
Yes, Mary, you're absolutely right. That could happen, and it would not be unreasonable for people who are saying where our caseloads are too high, we don't have time to serve our clients well, and all those other points that would come in. That is very important, but the question that has to come back to the commission and will continually is what do you want to set as a priority as you try to build the system? And I raised the question for all of you, is putting funding into additional people going into court the top priority or not? And the follow-up to that for me is, and how do we know? We don't know really what caseloads are for attorneys in public defenders. We know most of them are overworked, but we don't know what the caseloads are. We don't know as a system how they are performing if there is no management to see what they're doing. And I know there's a few people on the line in the meeting who would be very good to comment on that, but I look to Rich, and I know Rich needs more attorneys, but clearly he also needs a management structure to do the work that they're doing. And that really, from my point of view, is what we're trying to build, the ability to do that. But
let me indicate, my comment or question was not intended to suggest that management is not a priority or shouldn't be a priority. I'm just predicting where the pushback is going to come, and that we need to be prepared to address that.
yes, And I'm sorry if I made it sound that way. I didn't think that's what you were saying. I was really talking about priorities. You're talking about responses to practitioners, I guess, who are the people we're trying to support, right?
I do think too, management is the most effective and efficient way to know what those people in the trenches need. It's the quickest way to get those messages up the line. If we have one point person who can communicate down line and up the line to really inform us of, right, whatever war analogy we want to use, whatever things that they need. It's a lot harder to try and do that with 600 attorneys, maybe more across the state than it is with hopefully fewer than 29 regional managers.
That's just what, this is Pam. That's just what I was going to say is I feel like building the structure has always been building the structure to help defense attorneys in different regions and different areas with that have unique challenges to be able to advocate for themselves is what we've kind of always been missing, right? And so this is what that does is gets those defenders that are the folks that like Mary's talking about that are in the trenches in the same room to talk about what it is that they're struggling with. And then there is someone who like is the point person to go forth and really, you know, try. I mean, because if you look at like Davis County's situation, right? I mean, the fact that Todd is there and has been able to advocate on behalf of the defenders is beneficial, just like Margaret's office, my office, and Rich's office, right? So sometimes I think we look at those situations and say, well, those are different larger counties, and they are, and I know that there's different amounts of revenue in different counties, but it's also the ability to have a system that can advocate for what the defense attorneys need and that can show and demonstrate what the need is, that can be very helpful in the long term for the people in the trenches.
You know, I also agree that we can't meet our mandate or our goal of regionalization without a strong structure. And I look even at, you know, our situation in Utah County and central Utah, you know, we're working with Juab and Millard and Sanpete counties and perhaps additional counties. And it wouldn't work without the structure in place from my office, but also as we try to get better at what we do and get further into regionalization, ensuring that there's adequate and strong structure across the board in that region is increasingly essential.
Well, and I would like to pick up on a point sort of to reinforce that point Adam made with that I don't think we've talked about for a long time, which is that we don't know how people are spending their time. We don't know about caseloads. We know anecdotally that there are lawyers who are handling way more cases than they should be. And they're doing it for profit-making reasons by doing it for multiple jurisdictions. And presumably putting a structure in place, and this goes a little bit to Mary's point about the people in the trenches. Well, if people are fighting for 4 different sides at once and complaining they're not getting their freedom to collect multiple paychecks is being interfered with, that's different than saying I don't have any bullets. And perhaps absent strong administration that is looking upward and not just downward, we're never going to get a grip on those problems because we're going to be funding business as usual.
Yes, I think all those are crucial points. And in fact, as we talked about in the work group, we have discussions that we can anticipate with the grantees and with the folks doing the work. So I think it's good to get this out, but there are a lot of answers. I think the real question is going to be how we best collaborate with people and whether the answers are adequate. So, but getting to the point of how we evaluate what is going on and how we determine that, we have suggested that during the coming grant cycle, commissioners evaluate applications based on the priorities that we've already talked about and in the priority order that we've talked about. To do that and to get the information, the background that we think the commission needs, we are developing an assessment tool, a needs assessment tool, which also would be the primary part of the application process. And the needs assessment tool is intended to give us information on the organizational status, the current capacity, and get a sense of how we can then communicate with the grantees about either how they might move in the direction of improving their organizational structure, or how they can start it depending on what they have in place. As I said, this is intended to be the application also, the concept being that the grantees, knowing what the priorities are for the commission, would tailor an application to those priorities, and we could evaluate their requests against what we identify as their needs. So sorry, I'm now having trouble with my computer, but now it's going. So we talked about this with the work group, but hadn't been able to get into too much detail. We didn't have a clean copy at the time, and we're still working on finalizing language. But I did ask Leslie to put together just an idea of what it looks like with a very small section. We've tried to use yes, no questions and check boxes to make it as simple as possible, but we're still designing how it will look and how the definitions, not how it will look as much as how we will define or identify needs. So when we start with the managing defender question, we want to know what a managing defender does and what the admin support would do for that person. And one of the easiest ways is, from our perspective, was to identify what we think managing director should do. And so as we have this long list, I sort of like just comments on this too, if you have it, but there are some things that are pretty fundamental. Conflicts checks and how contract counsel does that is something we absolutely would want to know from the system. And the second part of it is not just, do you check your conflict, which attorneys will routinely do, I think, because it's their responsibility. I'm not. I'm sorry. Hold on. I lost it. Let me see what I can do. Sorry, Leslie. Thank you. You're right. It kicked me out.
I kicked you out, to be honest, so that we could all see each other.
Okay. During discussion. Good thinking. Well, now I know. Now I know I didn't mess it up. In any case, we are back. But if you look at this list, there's some higher level tasks that help the system to develop. If you're a county or city liaison, or you are working on attending stakeholder meetings as a representative of the system, that's good. But managing case assignment and balancing case loads, helping to deal with getting or identifying defense resources seems to be pretty fundamental to what we need a manager to do, separate from, or rather in support of the courtroom attorneys that are doing the work. So these are the priorities for defining managing defender. The next piece, hold on, there we go. We also have narrative questions, and we tried to avoid these to an extent so we can make a long list of questions without having too much narration, and trying to be able to increase our data collection simplicity so we can pool information instead of having to pull together narrative. So I'll stop here for a minute. Leslie and Greg and I did quite a few hours of work on building this tool, and I want to give them a chance to, if they want to mention anything about that or this, or refer to anything particularly. So Leslie, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So we're we were trying to do was to create a list of questions that would help us to assess a system, to identify that management structure, to find out the differences between the managing defenders and this structure across the state, so that we could identify what the perfect needs or the perfect asks would be for grant funding. And we tried to do this in a way, as Adam said, that avoided too many narrative questions, because we also wanted to be able to utilize some of these questions as compilable data over time. So that's why we've structured it this way. I don't feel like it takes us entirely away from funding like boots on the ground type positions in grants. If that's where we identify the need is, then that could potentially be the funding recommendation made for a specific system. It's just identifying what those needs are and being more direct about making sure that what we're looking at, the possibility of funding, is more in line with the IDC's ultimate goals and priorities.
Leslie, do you want to add anything? I'll assume not, but I can't see her. Thanks, Greg. I think that was a very good summary. There's obviously plenty of analysis still to do, but the better we can collect information and compile it, the easier it'll be, I think, to know where we need to go next. So the effect, we hope, of the needs assessment tool is threefold, really, and probably more than that. We want to know what the current capacity is of the organization. If they have a strong capacity already, we'll see if there are other gaps. We will have an understanding of what priorities there are for funding that will support the Commission's priorities, which we discussed earlier. And probably most importantly, it gives us the ability to tell grantees ahead of time where we see gaps in what they're doing, what we believe would be most useful for them, and give the idea of what the Commission will look for as they review everything, right? And we've identified our grant process in past as being competitive. We really think, and the work group discussed this some, we think there's going to be a need for more collaboration. As we talked about earlier, we can't just dump this idea on people and say, hey, we're taking you in a different direction. But we can collaborate. We can identify what those priorities are beforehand. We can make that clear. We can ask for explanations and plans from the counties, from the cities that apply, what they intend to do and how they'll build this. And the collaboration in part is not simply, here we're all going in one direction at the same time, we're all building management structures that look like this, whatever we define, but we can move towards it in increments, and we can take steps to go forward to say, here's what we think is important next, and let's build in that direction without forcing everybody to go the same place immediately. So any work group members want to say anything, any comments on that to add to it? That was one of the concern. Okay. All right, let me try to get through this quickly, and we may need to come back to this for more discussion. I don't know that we can get decision entirely on this. One of the last pieces we have is the idea of what are we going to do if we have more requests than we have funding. There are a number of options. Work group discussed this. I don't think this is something we can easily get to a decision on quickly. As you can see, there's several options that we can look at, but none of them, they're all in the abstract right now, which is part of the challenge for a decision. But Greg has made the point, we do need to know this. We need grant applicants to know ahead of time, hey, even if you have a perfect request, we can't guarantee that you'll get 100% of it. If we have less money than people are asking for, we're going to have to make some decisions. even if we don't have a cut in our current funding. I want to try to wrap up this quickly. We've taken a long time. If anybody has a comment on that reduction idea, please share it. But I think more likely we'll have to develop that and bring a proposal back to the commission in the near future. So let me just hit this quickly. We need a few things from the commission. We want to know whether you approve of the assessment process using the needs assessment tool, and then communicating with applicants, both the current ones and any future applicants, about how the process works. If we approve of the priorities, if you approve of the priorities that the work group put forward, again, that was at one of the first couple of slides, so I hope that's in your memory. If you have a different version of a plan, we need to know that, because we want the guidance of how we go forward with this. We need to come back to the guide to get approval on the plan for reductions, but we certainly need to know whether we're moving forward in the proper way to both assess need, communicate with our applicants, and then also to look forward to awards and the award process. So I apologize. I know this has taken a long time to get through it. It's good discussion, but we need to make sure as staff that we're on the right track and there's not any major concerns about how we are getting the process to support the priorities that you identified at the last meeting. So Commissioner Khumalo, Joanna, I'll let you all take that over and see where we need to go from here.
Thank you. Thanks, Adam, and all of you who worked on that. So I guess, do you think we need to leave the questions up? Do you want to hear commissioners kind of weigh in on that right now? Or Joanna, what will work best?
I don't know that we need a vote, because Adam, I'm pretty sure we got a vote on this last time about the general approach, and we haven't refined it enough. And I think this is squarely in our mandate to go try it and see how it works, unless commissioners want us to change something. But I don't think it needs to be a formal vote. We're happy to hear, I see Ryan's raising his hand, or was raising his hand, feedback on it to better refine it. But I think we've got to just try this, right, and see how it goes, and see if it may blow up in our faces, but we may not have any money, so we'll figure it out.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree with that. We want direction and information if there's a problem, or opinion if there's a problem, but we are on this track. We have directive from the commission already. So unless there's any real objections, I agree we can take this and move forward.
Okay. Ryan, did you raise your hand?
I did for a second. I see this is what staff's proposing, what we voted on last time in these priorities. We're shifting from a focus of helping entities provide indigent services, meaning attorneys and those things, to a focus of providing a management system for regionalization for those services. And that, as Michael said, then we can get a better grasp on how many people are doing what. Because it's really, in the end, it's really a lot of private attorneys bidding on these jobs for counties and cities. And if we're just funding one more private attorney, how much closer are we getting to a regional or systemic change? I don't know if this way will work or not, but the other way was kind of working. This way might work better. And it's probably a good time, if we're going to make a shift, to make that shift now, especially given the budget change that we faced last year. It kind of reset a lot of paths we were going down, where people, I mean, and I've said this from the beginning, I think people had a very clear expectation that they were going to get that amount of money for a very long time. And no one was looking at figuring out how to fund it themselves. Cities, counties, everybody. So I think this helps we have a chance to reset if we're going to. I like this plan as much as any I can think of, and I appreciate staff's efforts.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Joanna put a thumb up, and yeah, it's helpful to hear the feedback. Okay. Is that enough for that point then? Number 4 on the agenda? Okay. Yeah, nicely shared. That was a lot. That was a lot. Good work. Thank you for all of that work, Joanna and staff. We're going to change the order up a little bit because we saw Representative Ferry join in, and Representative Ferry always makes us wish we could move to the country with his background. Was it real? Is it real or is that fake? It might be fake this time, but I know you live in a place that kind of looks like that.
Well, it's a real background, but it's fake right now. Here, I'm actually.
He's in the tractor.
I'm out driving a great big tractor. It might have a little background noise. Here, I'll turn off my virtual background, and you can all.
His favorite meeting location.
And then you can all like bask in the glory. This is where I'm at. Can you see that?
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
this is part of my farm, and I apologize for being late. I was on the water users task force at a meeting, and I was presenting on a water bill that I'm doing. So anyway,
Great.
but here I am. So
and I think
and
you
let me
are
say,
going to give us any other update or legislative preview. Is that what you were thinking?
yes, for sure. So a couple of things, and before I go there, let me just say, in regards to the last conversation, the last topic that we were discussing, there was some comment about how is legislature going to perceive this. I think that having the legislature, there's a few members that have dived into indigent defense and these issues associated with it, but having a broad base, like a uniform standard and accountability, so that we don't create situations where we're picking winners and losers, or we're choosing, playing favorites with one group over another, and we can defend our, the reasons for the decisions that we make. That will always play much better with the legislature, and we'll continue to receive the support that we need to get the funding and to get the resources that we need to have a successful program. So, and with that, so this upcoming session, this last week, we got some updated information, and let me start off by saying there's going to be some shakeup on our committee. So the committee that oversees IDC and issues associated with the courts, criminal justice, all of those types of issues, EOCJ, it's losing over half of the House members are not coming back to the legislature. So I'm not sure what the Senate's going to look like, but on the House side, we're going to see a lot of new faces. So I look at this as a real opportunity where we can reach out to some new members, help share the message and vision for the IDC, and bring them along and get support for this critical program that we're running. And so, we'll see how that goes. But I would just encourage all of you to try to make an effort to reach out to the new members of the committee, and let's inform them. Let's teach them about what we're doing and help them understand why it's so important. So, so this upcoming session, we've received some numbers back from the office of the fiscal analyst office, and numbers actually look pretty good for this upcoming session. But there's a word of caution in that, because the federal government has pumped so much money into all this, especially the state of Utah. Something to the tune of $12 billion got put into, whether it was through the direct checks that people received, individuals received, or through increased benefits for unemployment, to workforce services received large sums of money. Our local communities, so direct grants to our counties and cities and other things that happened. So there was this huge influx of cash that happened back in April, May, June, and what that did, that stopped the bleeding, because it was really, back in March and April, it was really bad. We saw significant declines, and people were just not spending money. You know, everything was closed, so people weren't out shopping. They weren't out buying things, and 100% of our funding comes from sales tax revenue. And so we want people, you know, we want a good economy. We want people out buying things. And so, so there was this influx of cash from the federal government, and people went out and spent most of that money, which boosted our local economy. And so the statewide GDP is only going to be down less than 1% this year, and we expect something in the neighborhood of a 3.5% growth for next year. But when you compare that to 17, 18, 19, when we had 6 and 7% growth, where it's slowed down quite a bit. So we're not out of the woods yet. We're not in where it's going to be. It's going to be tough. Like, it's going to be a fight to get the money that we need to operate. And so I know that there's been some, or that you know, the governor's office has been asking for building blocks and base budget data or numbers that we need. And so we just need to have, again, that concentrated effort to try to push to get that. I think we have a good chance because we can tell a good story. The point being in this conversation, I guess, is there is money available. We need to go and fight for it. It'll be tough to get what we want, but I think it's possible. And I think that we'll see improvement in our funding situation for this next year.
Thank you.
That's great.
Can I ask you a question, Representative Ferry?
Absolutely, yes.
When do you think the new committee assignments and chairs and things will be out and public and voted on, or when will we know?
So the assignments will be made most likely within the next few weeks. So I think you know, by the middle of December we should know committee assignments and who will be assigned to EOCJ. Yeah.
There's going to be, sorry, there's going to be at least 4 new members in EOCJ, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
I mean, I'm still a freshman, right? It's my first term still, and I'm going to be the second most senior House member on that committee, which is crazy. But our committee got, you know, just from people retiring, and you know, a huge loss to the committee and to IDC is Representative Hutchings was defeated in the election, and that's a huge blow because he's been the chairman of the committee for the last decade and really had a wealth of knowledge and experience that just couldn't be matched. And so, you know, there'll be big shoes to fill there for whoever takes that position, and we'll be supportive of whoever takes that spot. So it'll be a big learning curve, but you know, I'm optimistic that we'll get good people on the committee and have the support we need.
okay, and I will, as soon as I find out who's on EOCJ, I'll send it out to the already in the loop IDC commissioners. I'm sure Michael Drexel will know even a minute before I know, but as soon as I figure it out, I'll send it out.
That'll be good.
That's really helpful. Kim was going to talk about the JRI audit and the follow-up. She could not make it, so I think we can just table that, except to say that CCJJ is really focusing on continuing to work on JRI because the audit said basically there are a lot of issues, but there's progress that needs to be made. And so the 4 focus areas for CCJJ going forward are really helping to develop those local criminal justice coordinating committees, and then working on no entry programs, making sure that we're keeping people out of the system, making sure JRI is being implemented with fidelity, and then helping to redefine success and recidivism so we really know what's happening. So that'll involve a lot of stakeholders. Many of you will be involved, or not necessarily, but directly. But I think they will work on that as soon as they figure out who is leading all of the executive branch agencies, which these 30 days is up in the air. I don't know if you all know, but Mike Haddon, the director of the Department of Corrections, has left, and the transition team is interviewing all of the executive directors. I've talked to the transition team. A bunch of CCJJ staff has talked to the transition team. everyone's being interviewed. So it's a little bit, people are a little jumpy right now, but I think we should know all of that in the next 30 days too. And that will help us identify how JRI implementation keeps going forward, whether it's with some of the existing partners or new people. But that's all I wanted to say about that. So we can go.
Joanna?
Yes.
So this is Laureen. I just want to, I just read the executive summaries of those 3 performance audits, and I just thought it might be nice for this group to hear how cool what they're recommending is. We in Davis County have already started a CJCC. We did it kind of because we saw a need and an opportunity probably 8 weeks ago. So that's a criminal justice coordinating council, and it's all of the decision makers throughout the entire system in the county who touch criminal justice. And the cool thing is that we as a group started to meet every single month for just 1 hour, but we had everyone at the table, including behavioral health and pretrial, and just a really great group. We were adding to it a police chief from a city, and hoping to get a better time for our justice court judge in Chelsea to be able to make it more often. But otherwise, we really have everyone there every single month, and we have had for 18 months. So I can say that these CJCCs are really a good thing, and I look forward to more counties implementing them. Because of the conversation that we had, we knew we'd focus one thing on our re-entry for folks leaving our jail in Davis County, and behavioral health heard about that, and just barely recently they found a way to put one of their caseworkers right in the jail to work with individuals before they leave. And the cool thing is that in 2016 I participated in a point in time count in our county, and the person who was leading our van is a single mom who had previously experienced homelessness. And now then by that time when I met her, she was working at Davis Behavioral, working on an undergraduate. She finished her undergraduate, still working for Davis Behavioral, wanted to apply for master's programs, wanted to see if I could write a letter of application. I did so. She just texted me a couple days ago. She said she got in to Boise State's program. And I said, well, what are you doing at Davis Behavioral now? Because I hadn't seen her in our local homeless coordinating council. She says, oh, I have a new assignment. I'm going to be working in the jail as the caseworker to help with reentry. And so I just, with all this going on, I just want to say that this work is really cool and important, and to see people have opportunities to turn things around and contribute. And I think that's what drives me and hopefully drives all of us. So just kind of a cool, true story to share along with the CJCC recommendation in this audit.
Nice.
So with that, the next one on our next point on our agenda is we'll go back to the potential non-lapsing funding discussion. So our staff will lead us in that.
And this is a pretty quick item. We've always held a non-lapsing balance. So for those of you who aren't in state government, that means money that you can spend during the fiscal year, but which you haven't spent. We have non-lapsing authority, which means it carries over. But the trick with non-lapsing money is we can't spend it from July to December or whenever the governor's budget comes out. We can only really spend it between January and June. So our grants are one-year cycles, and it's very awkward to try and get that non-lapsing money out there. We, with our budget cuts, have never really needed to access it. We've not caught up with it, but this year we have about a $1.5 million non-lapsing budget amount, and that is, it stems from really even the very beginning, from me, us being created in July, me being hired in October, so that's money not being spent, then staff getting developed, then grants, right? So you can see where we got that balance. It's not that we haven't used it, but we haven't been able to award it. So we would like to award it, right? We would like to get it to our grantees and get it to its most beneficial use. And so separate from everything Adam was talking about, we are thinking about developing a quick grant application for entities to use for 6 months of funding, right? To supplement defense resources if they need them, where we cut them, or to do a variety of different things. I'll let Greg talk about it a little bit more, but the one downside or upside for you all is it will mean more votes on grants, but hopefully these will be quick and easy and we'll make it a pretty streamlined process. The other reason to do it is that we've got some interest from, if you remember, Kane County applied for a grant and we had to deny it. Wasatch County is also now interested in working with the Utah County Public Defenders Association and may need our help. So these are sort of some of the funding ideas that we might use it for. There's a big caveat, we might not get to keep it, right? It may get swept, it may get taken back. All signs point to it won't, but there's always an asterisk. Greg, I think I overtalked in the part that you were going to talk about, but was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, thanks, Joanna. So the good news here is that we can do a really streamlined application, especially for the current grantees, because it would be basically just a modification to their existing grant. So it could be like a one-page, essentially grant modification, pretty quick. And then if there is consideration of other new systems coming under a regionalization, then we could look at using the FY21 applications they've already provided, just with some updated background information. And for a system such as WhatsApp, we could look at doing a shortened version of the FY21 application. Did you want me to talk about a potential timeline for that? So it would be probably too quick for us to be able to have funding applications and recommendations back to the commission by the December meeting, since it's early in the month. But I think that feasibly we could get a notice of funding opportunity out by the end of this month on the 30th, have an application deadline somewhere around the 21st of December, some staff review and clarification until about the 6th of January, have funding recommendations to commissioners around the 7th of January, in time for commission approval on the 14th or 21st when the IDC commission meeting occurs in January. And then we could do a lot of the prep work for draft awards to be ready at that time. Just make any changes that need to be done very quickly and have those out by Adobe sign to grantees, even probably by the 18th of January.
Great.
And so, Michael Drexel, to your question about Duchesne's funding, that would be, I mean, that's the kind of non-lapsing balance, right? When Summit pulled back, or when we've ever had any overages like that. So that would be put back into that funding and then be available for this program. Worst case scenario. It means a little more work, but I think it's really important that we catch up to our funding cycle, especially as we move forward with things. So I think it's a priority if we get to use it. I know it will mean more work for you, but we will try and make it really easy and fun because you love the IDC and you love long meetings. But look, we're almost done with this one. And I can talk about the last agenda item real fast. Any thoughts or questions on that non-lapsing? I mean,
great myself. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has a comment. Get the money out. Have people do things with it.
It's hard to fund people for 6 months, right? So that'll be difficult, but I would think, Pam and Rich, you applied for that data person, starting to get maybe some, pathway on that, trying to build back some of the things that we were hoping for last session to prepare us for potential funding in July, with the big risk that we may not have that funding. So it's going to be a tightrope, but a fun one. Okay.
Well, I think that timeline sounds really good, Greg, what you outlined there. Just with the holidays, it sounds realistic, but could work for folks. All right. If there's no other comments on that, then you wanted to do the last one there, Joanna? What, we're doing just looking at the 2021 meeting schedule then?
Yep. Did everyone get a chance to look at that and notice whether they liked it or didn't like it? It's not a great departure. The one thing I didn't do was really eliminate many months just in case. I think I kept July off it. The one thing I thought, sorry.
August did too,
Or
right?
August.
July and August, I'm not seeing a
Yes.
meeting date listed for those 2 months. I noted that. I noted most of them are fourth Thursdays of the month, except for December and January, and then a year from now in November, January and November of next year are the third Thursdays, those particular months. Otherwise, it's pretty consistent with a fourth Thursday. Same
Yeah.
time, right? 2 o'clock.
Yeah. The one thing I would change is January 14th instead of January 21st, because the legislative session starts in the following week. And there's actually a really great ABA CLE that's happening on the 21st and 22nd, or the 20th and 21st on misdemeanors and misdemeanor representation in municipal courts. So I think that'll be really interesting for a lot of us to attend. So if we can make January 14th and the rest, I will send you meeting invites. You may decline them or not. I'll probably change them 8 times and send you different meeting announcements. I apologize for that. Zoom was being persnickety today, but that's all I have for that.
Yeah. Anyone have a comment on those proposed meeting dates? Yeah, they looked workable for me. I just really like having things in advance, and I bet everybody really appreciates that. So thanks for mapping out that year. So we don't need to vote on anything today, or we've covered everything we needed to cover?
Just a final motion.
Okay. So any last comment from anyone from the commissioners or staff?
I just want to thank staff for their hard work in looking at the needs assessments and putting our small group together and really trying to find the best way forward for us as a state and as a commission. And I know how hard they've worked.
Thank you.
Great comment.
My staff is awesome. Thank you, Margaret.
Yes. And honestly, I still, because it was my first time, remember a lot of discussion from all of the commissioners during and following the grant process and the awarding decisions. And it just seems like a lot of what the staff has been figuring out and working on is came from things we learned in this last time and opportunities to improve. That reminds me, did we, I guess you kind of answered Michael Drexel's question, what if it just goes back into the non-lapsing funding then, right? If there's somebody who ends up just not doing what is required to receive the funds. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, it's been a great meeting and we are done 30 minutes early. Always gift of time is a good thing. Thanks to all of you so much for your service and for bringing your experience to the group. It's a great group. And I hope you have a fantastic Thanksgiving. And I hope you already have a house full like I do. So that even if no one else can come over, you just have plenty of people to talk to. Or at least play with the dog or whatever. I have a dog barrier in my car too, Mary. All right, you're fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Wait, we need a final motion.
Oh, motion to. Okay, Michael Zimmerman.
Motion to adjourn.
A second?
I'll second it.
All right, from Margaret. All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks.
See you soon. Bye-bye.